Hello Game Boys and Game Girls, I'm the Game Boy Guru, and welcome to the second edition of Game Pickups. This is going to be a longer video than the first one because I have a lot to cover. My wife and I are still on vacation, and we've been visiting friends, and I picked up a lot of games, so I've got a lot to go over here, so sit back and enjoy. First up, when I went out hunting yesterday, I happened upon an NES game that I've been looking for quite some time, and was glad to finally find a copy, and that is Snake, Rattle, and Roll. It's sort of an isometric game where you play as a snake and you jump around and eat things and blow stuff up, and it's a fun game. I remember playing it over friends' houses a couple times when they rented it, and glad to finally have a copy of this. Next up, a couple of PSP games that I picked up yesterday. First is Luxor, The Wrath of Set. This is one of many games in the Luxor series. I've got Luxor 3 on the Wii, and I've enjoyed some of the PC games as well, so glad to have that. And also very glad to have found a very inexpensive copy of Ys, The Ark of Napishtim. This RPG is a remake of the third game in the Ys series, and I've been kind of working on Ys Chronicle 1 and 2 on PSP lately. Made it through the first game, and I'm kind of toward the beginning of the second game right now due to a playthrough that I've recently done on an online forum. And so, glad to finally have a copy of this, and at such a good price. Now I've got a lot of Game Boy games that I picked up yesterday, so I want to get through those. I don't want to whip through them too fast, but I do want to not take up too much time. So first up is Wheel of Fortune. I noticed right away when I booted this up to test it that the music, the theme music to the show, is in there, but it's off time, so it doesn't necessarily bode well for the rest of the game. But I will reserve judgment until I have a chance to play it at length. Next is We're Back, a Dinosaur's Story. I don't have any experience with the movie this is based on, so other than knowing that it's a animated dinosaur movie from the 90s, I really don't know much about it. It's kind of a cutesy action platforming game, and I played a couple minutes of it to test it. Could be interesting, so we'll find out more. This is The Simpsons, Bart versus the Juggernauts. If memory serves, this is a Game Boy exclusive. I know that Bart versus the Space Mutants was on just about everything, and then some of the other Bart versus games were on different systems, but I think this one may be exclusive to the Game Boy. Historically, they've not been seen as very good, so we'll find out once I get a chance to actually play it. Next up is a Konami, or should I say Ultra, classic, Motocross Maniacs. A bit of a spiritual sequel in some ways to Nintendo's Excite Bike, and is probably the best, if not only, side-scrolling motorbike game, or motorcycle game, on the Game Boy. So, never found a copy of this out in the wild before that wasn't really beat up, so glad to finally have a copy with a clean label and in good condition. Also have Ring Rage. I don't know much about this game. It's a wrestling game. I tested it for a couple of minutes. I was terrible, and so I will have to come back to this one and learn the controls and kind of figure out what I'm doing. We have Jeopardy! Team Tournament, once again by Game Tech, just like the Wheel of Fortune and a lot of the other Game Show games that have appeared on 8-bit consoles. This one has Super Game Boy support, so since a lot of the game is static images and less animation, we'll see if they do more than just add a fancy background to it. Next up from THQ, we've got Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Love the original film. It's super cheesy, so bad it's good, kind of B-movie. The second film is absolutely terrible, and no one should ever burden themselves by watching it. The game, as far as I can tell when I booted it up to test, takes place somewhere either between the two films or possibly after or during the second film. I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, looks interesting. We also have Tetris Plus, which showed up on just about everything. This one also has Super Game Boy support, and so we'll see how it plays here on the Game Boy. I did check this out just for a couple of minutes earlier today, and there's kind of a puzzle mode which is intriguing, where you have to eliminate lines in order to help this little guy who's part of the game reach the bottom. So that could be a fun little diversion from the standard Tetris formula. We also have The Hunt for Red October, or if I can do my best Sean Connery voice, The Hunt for Red October. And of course this was on the NES, and there's this Game Boy version as well. This was done by High Tech Expressions. I'm not sure if they developed it or not, but they have a bit of a sketchy record in terms of some of their games. I know some of the stuff they put out on PC is kind of janky. So we'll see what the actual gameplay is like when I get a chance to boot this one up. This one was less expensive, I think, because of the label. It's Dr. Franken. You can kind of see here the label is curling up and is looking pretty shabby on both sides here on the bottom, but interesting little Frankenstein's monster themed platformer. I think a little bit of a Metroidvania style, because you sort of seem to go back and forth between rooms trying to meet different objectives. So I'll have to put a little bit of time into this one and really see what it's about. Next up, Super Chase HQ. It's unfortunate, of course, that there are no voice samples in the game, so you don't hear the "This is Nancy from Chase HQ" and all of that. But it's not too bad. I played it and tested it out this morning. Was able to apprehend the first criminal in the game, so that was cool. This one seems like it'll be fun. Next up, Judge Dredd by Acclaim. I tested this one out earlier today as well, and it's a little different. I'm not quite sure what to think of it yet. It's sort of got that, let's take a formula and make smooth animation and take a game that really doesn't belong on the Game Boy, but let's put it there anyway. And so I think maybe this one is a little too big for its britches, but I'll know more when I put more time into it. I've got Bubble Bobble, finally. I scored Bubble Bobble 2 over a year ago, but haven't come across a decent copy of this yet. So glad to have this one and be able to compare this to the NES version. And Wordtris. Of course, this being one of many post-Tetris puzzle games with the tris at the end that tries to make it associate with Tetris but isn't necessarily that much like it. Could be interesting. I tested this out, and this one seems like, because of the randomness of having to put the words together and everything, this one could have some possibility. This is The Game of Harmony by Accolade, and I popped this in and messed around with it for a couple minutes, had no idea what I was doing. I vaguely remember reading a review of this years and years ago in a games magazine, and so I may have to try and dig that out if it's one that I still have in my house, and see if I can get a little bit more of an idea of how to play this. Because it seems obscure enough that I may or may not be able to find a manual online. I know I've certainly not seen one out in the wild. And this is Skate or Die, Bad and Rad. And of course, the gameplay is probably going to be either bad or rad, but probably not both. But always loved Skate or Die on the NES as a kid, so we'll see what this is like. If memory serves, I think it's a bit more of a side-scrolling action platformer where you like ride around on your skateboard and try to avoid obstacles and throw rocks or whatever at bullies or punks or something. I don't remember, but anyway, could be fun. And a movie license game, Cliffhanger. I've got the Sega Genesis version that I picked up here a few months back. It's a little janky. I tried this for a couple minutes and not sure if this is going to be very good, as with many licensed titles from this era, but we'll wait and see. Dead Heat Scramble, some sort of racing game. Don't really know much about it, but we'll see. Shoplifter 2. Shoplifter games have never been a series that I've really been into. I enjoy the gameplay at a base level, but I just don't own any of them. So this is my actual first Shoplifter game that I own. Played it, enjoyed it, so this is one I think that I'll dig when I put some more time into it. And we have The Punisher, The Ultimate Payback, with a special appearance by Spider-Man. So now that you've got the Punisher kind of back in the limelight with his inclusion in the second season of Daredevil on Netflix, could be interesting. I don't know if this is sort of an on-rails, move the targeting reticle around the screen and shoot it type of game, or more of an action platformer, beat-em-up style like some of the other Punisher games, but we'll find out. Glad to finally have Quarth in the collection. Every time I've seen this in the wild, the label is either really beat up, or the cart is in really bad shape, or has been horribly yellowed. So I'm glad to finally have a clean copy of this. Next, Joe and Mac, otherwise known as Caveman Ninjas. I have the Super NES version of this, and there's also an NES version, Sega Genesis version, so this has been ported to everything. Not sure how this is going to play on the Game Boy. The original Super NES game is great, but not sure how this is going to turn out, so we'll find out. Then we've got Super Scrabble, which is in some ways completely unnecessary based on the fact that you can play Words with Friends on just about any smartphone. But Scrabble is a fun game still, so we'll see how this turns out. NBA All-Star Challenge. I've got the second one already, so when I saw the first one, I thought, well, I should probably pick it up because I'm going to be reviewing both eventually. And since this one was dirt cheap, I decided to go for it. And then this one is Bill Elliott's NASCAR Fast Tracks. It seems like I tested it out earlier, it seems like it's a bit deeper than your standard arcade racer that you would normally find on a system like the Game Boy. So I'm probably going to have to dig up a manual scan online, or see if I can find a loose manual somewhere, because I think it's going to take a little bit more time to get into this one and really dig into it. We also got Nintendo World Cup, soccer game. It's branded as Nintendo, and it was published by Nintendo, but it was actually developed by Technos of Japan, and has the Kunio-kun characters and style to it, and so it's actually kind of fun, arcadey soccer game. I played it for a couple minutes this morning and kind of enjoyed it, so we'll see. It's probably much better than, I can't remember if it's Soccer Mania or what the other early soccer title was on the Game Boy that's just so laughably bad, but this one I thought was pretty decent. And finally, in Game Boy games, I also grabbed Iron Man Exo Manowar in Heavy Metal. I know that this has come out on other systems. There's a PlayStation and Sega Saturn version of this game, sort of a side-scrolling action platformer with some mild puzzle-solving elements, things like that. And so, played a few minutes. It's a little fun. It's a little fun. It's a little weird. It's definitely quirky. So we'll see how this one looks when I put a little bit more time into it. And then today, I had a chance to go out and, oh, wait a minute. I guess there's two more carts here on the bottom of the bag. And that would include Hatris, one of the other Tris games that tried to capitalize on the popularity of Tetris and the whole puzzle game genre in general. And this is another one of those that, not sure how well this is going to compare to Tetris. I know reviews of this in the past have kind of said that it's good, but it's not great like Tetris, so we'll see. And now the final Game Boy game is Disney's Pinocchio. Matt the Game Boy did a review of this on his channel and kind of indicated that it was just sort of okay, not spectacular, and just kind of there. So it's got interesting fluid animation like you would see when you actually have Pinocchio walk. It sounds, I mean, it looks like Pinocchio walking in the film, and so it'd be interesting to see just how that compares and how the rest of the game turns out. And I also got some stuff at a pawn shop today. Did just a little bit of checking and found a couple of things, so I'll go over those very briefly. First, for the PSP, Virtua Tennis 3. Glad to finally have one of the Virtua Tennis games in a portable form. And Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, the actual first game in the series, even though it wasn't named just Kingdom Hearts. This is a prequel to the first Kingdom Hearts game, and so I've got this and then the first game, so now I can begin the story at the beginning. And then I've got a couple PlayStation 2 games here. I've got ATV Off-Road Fury 2. Not a big racing game fan, but with the recent acquisition of a decent racing wheel for PS2 and Xbox, I've started to have a little bit more fun with them. So we'll check that out. And Rocky. Big fan of the old Rocky movies, and I don't know how well this one got reviewed. I hope it got reviewed better than the Sega Master System game, but looks like I can fight Ivan Drago, and so I must break him. And finally, Silent Scope 3. And the pawn shop that I bought it from was kind enough to resurface the disc for me because it didn't look very good, but now it's very smooth, and I think this will boot up in my PS2 Slim fine. I've never really been into the whole Silent Scope thing, but I get the appeal, and so we'll see how this plays with analog control versus the big upright arcade cabinet with the giant gun that you can point around with it. So we'll see how that plays. That's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching and for sitting through all that list of games. And as always, thanks for playing, and game on.